OutFront next, breaking news, a government shutdown, no end in sight, anti-Trump protests across the nation, all on the president's one-year anniversary in office. Plus, no show, the president upset about missing his own big party, his anniversary party at Mar-a-Lago tonight. The $100,000 per couple event, though, is still on, even with the government shutdown. And Trump's grand promises that got him elected, where do they stand 1 year later? You may be surprised. Let's go out front. Good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Welcome to a special edition of Out Front. We are following breaking news on several fronts this evening on the one-year anniversary of President Trump taking office. A shutdown government that has forced Trump to stay in Washington as protesters around the country are chanting no to Trump. It is certainly not how the president envisioned this evening going. At this hour, he thought he'd be in Mar-a-Lago at his estate, celebrating with friends at a $100,000 per couple fundraiser for his reelection that went up to $250,000 if you participated in a roundtable with him. Instead, he's at the White House, where just outside, angry Americans were marching today in protests. And that's what we saw across the country. Massive crowds from New York to Chicago, Los Angeles, hundreds of thousands of people turning out. Down the street from the White House, negotiations to end the government, frankly, going nowhere. The House and Senate reconvening for a rare Saturday session. There has been pretty much no progress to report, though. The majority leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, said late tonight there will be a vote Monday on a stopgap measure to fund the government till February 8th. But Republicans and Democrats spent most of the day blaming each other, with the president taking the lead. He began the day with a tweet at 6:30 a.m. this morning. That's pretty usual, but here's the tweet. This is the one-year anniversary of my presidency, and the Democrats wanted to give me a nice present. Hashtag Democrat shutdown. Now, a source, though, tells CNN privately Trump is telling aides and allies that, quote, he will be blamed, and his own words explain why. He's very consistent on this, because when the government shut down in October 2013, Trump was relentless in blaming Obama and the Democrats, at one point tweeting, Obama and the Democrats want this shutdown. He has failed to lead. Negotiate our country is a laughingstock. People are far angrier at the president than they are at Congress. Read the shutdown. So, as I said, he's very consistent. He also went on television back then to blame Obama.
He's not a natural deal maker. He wants to get something done, but he wants it to be his way or the highway.
You have to get everybody in a room. You have to be a leader. The president has to lead. He's got to get Mr. Boehner and everybody else in a room, and they have to make a deal.
Lead, get something done, make a deal. Well, those are the very things, of course, the president thus far has failed to do. Chuck Schumer says he left a crucial White House meeting yesterday, just hours before the shutdown. He thought that he and the president had made great progress, and then, of course, he found out things had changed.
Negotiating with President Trump is like negotiating with Jell-O. That's why this compromise will be called the Trump shutdown.
Soon after Schumer said that, the White House sent out the budget director, Mick Mulvaney, to speak to the press.
You have to ask yourself at one point, does it even become profitable to continue to work with somebody like that? So Mr. Schumer's going to have to up his game a little bit.
Meanwhile, the party goes on at Mar-a-Lago. The guest of honor is stuck 1,000 miles away inside the White House. Phil Mattingly is out front tonight on Capitol Hill, where we begin our coverage. And Phil, where do things stand now?
Yeah, Erin, if you want a flavor of where things actually are, I'll just read you a text I got from a senior Republican source who said basically everyone might as well go home for the night as nothing substantive is going to happen. That's day one of the shutdown. On the House floor, on the Senate floor, a lot of theatrics, a lot of political talking points, but behind the scenes, very little movement in the direction of actually reaching some sort of compromise. The Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer didn't hear from President Trump today. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell didn't talk to Senator Schumer. McConnell's team says Schumer should be calling them first. Schumer's team says McConnell's team should be calling them first. Their offices, Erin, less than a half football field apart. As one Democratic aide told me, at this point, everybody is dug in. Now, the one kind of primary source of potential talks comes from Senators Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake. They were shuttling back and forth between McConnell's office and Schumer's office at various points throughout the evening. And they were also trying to make a deal last night at the last minute. But I'm told that deal is not ripe yet. What they're working on is not quite there yet. And that means we will move into day two of a shutdown with no resolution necessarily in sight. Erin, at this point, the next vote on the Senate floor is scheduled for 1 a.m. on Monday. As one lawmaker told me just a short while ago, we either start moving tomorrow, this thing is going to go a while.
All right. Thank you very much, Phil. And Jim Acosta's out front at the White House. So, Jim, obviously sounding pretty sandbox-ish and childish over on Capitol Hill. And the president tonight obviously held out hope as long as he could that he'd have a very different kind of evening, being where he wants to be, Mar-a-Lago, at a big party, a huge fundraiser. But instead, he is not there. He's at the White House and privately admitting he thinks he's going to carry the blame for this.
That's right, Erin. It's a party of one for the president tonight here at the White House. He won't be down at Mar-a-Lago. They did exchange insults and hashtags today, but no proposals. Just to echo what Phil Mattingly was saying a few moments ago, I just talked to a source familiar with the process of trying to end this shutdown, and this source said that there is no proposal on the radar screen at this point that has any chance of being passed to reopen the federal government. So that is how dire things stand right now. We do understand from talking to a source close to this White House that the president, while he has been behind closed doors throughout the day, he is privately worried that he's going to be blamed for all of this, even though the White House and top officials here have been calling this the Democrat shutdown. And just to give you a sense of that, they did put out some pictures over here at the White House of the president just in the last several minutes. We want to caution our viewers, these are official photos from the White House. They were taken by a White House photographer. The press was not allowed to capture these images. One of those images you see, Erin, is of the president talking to White House staff. There he is walking down the colony. But there's another picture of the president talking to White House staff, and they're all smiling. That is not exactly the kind of optic or image that the public probably wants to see at this point. They probably want to see people hard at work inside the White House. Instead, you're seeing the president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and other top officials like the press secretary and so on, smiling there inside the West Wing, not really moving towards any kind of conclusion to all of this. Now, we did mention that a few moments ago, the president was expected to be down at Mar-a-Lago this evening for a big glitzy fundraiser at his resort down there. That is obviously not happening, but the show is going on down there. We understand the president will appear via a video message, and the message to those people down there is he couldn't make it because of the shutdown and that it's the Democrats' fault. Erin, it's going to be hard to continue to make that argument. They're in control of the White House. They're in control of the Congress. And at this point, their own party can't solve this crisis. Erin. All
right. Thank you very much, Jim Acosta. We'll be going back to the White House, and we will be going to Mar-a-Lago so you can see, I don't know, what happens when you pay $250,000 to have a roundtable with the president, hang out with him, and he's not there, and you're still paying $250,000. All right, out front now, Margaret Hoover. She worked in the George W. Bush White House. Jason Miller, former senior communications advisor for the Trump campaign. Joan Walsh, national affairs correspondent for The Nation. John Avlon, editor-in-chief of The Daily Beast. Nia Malika Henderson, senior political reporter. And Chris Cillizza, editor-at-large for CNN Politics. I just want to, John, pull that picture back up of them all smiling. And the reason I want to do it is it's almost hilarious. I mean, look at it's. I'm not going to say it's fake. I know they took the picture, but I mean, really, everybody's just smiling so happily and broadly being at work on a Saturday. It seems a little absurd. The White House is calling this a hostage negotiation. Who blinks first?
It's a little close for the hostage negotiation metaphor. These are still early hours, but this looks bad because the positions are pretty intractable and the president isn't leading in the way he prescribed, for example, that President Obama do when the last shutdown occurred in 2013. Here's the problem for Republicans. Not only do they have unified control of government, but in the history of shutdowns we've had over recent decades, it's been Republican Congress against a Democratic president. And so the perception has been that Republicans in Congress are the folks who cheerlead a shutdown. The fact this is happening on the one-year anniversary with a Republican in the White House and Republicans in control of Congress, not that it's all them, because Democrats are taking a tough tack on this, that is an optic problem in the public perception for them. And so the only way to blow through that is going to be if the president steps up and takes his own advice and starts to lead. And that's going to mean getting out of the bunker.
And I mean, here's the thing. Minority Leader Senator Schumer has not spoken to the president today. He said so directly. McConnell, the Majority Leader, has not spoken to Schumer. And what was it, a half a football field apart, as Phil described their offices? I mean, frankly, it seems very childish, but it also is very clear we're not getting anywhere. If these grown individuals are not talking.
I mean, this was an entire wasted day. And I think the kind of conventional wisdom going into this was that, they'd get their acts together over the weekend. Maybe it would be pretty short. But everybody seems really dug in at this point, with the president being a real wild card in terms of what he wants to see. And I think it also goes to show that do Republicans actually really want to do anything on immigration reform, right? I mean, they say they do, and they've said that for a while. The president has certainly said that In 2013, you had a bill that came through the Senate. Not that many Republicans voted for it. I think something like 14 Republicans voted for it. It never even was brought up in the House. And I think that's where Democrats find themselves, not really trusting that something would ever actually happen on DACA.
Chris.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that's why 4 weeks doesn't work. How about 3 weeks?
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of like
it's
8-minute
so
abs.
absurd.
Why don't we try 7-minute abs? You know what I mean? It's just so ridiculous. And I think it is, to Nia's point, a trust issue. Phil Mattingly mentioned something that I think is important, which is the conventional wisdom, and Nia mentioned this, was, oh, well, if they had 2 more hours last night, they would have gotten it done. So that today somehow. Yeah. But with every passing day,
it's easier to get it longer.
I would say, think about it like jumping off of the high diving board, right? The first time you're nervous, but once you do it once, now it's like, well, okay, this isn't as bad as we thought, and you do it again. I just think if you don't get something done tomorrow into Monday, the positions aren't going to get less intractable. Right. The longer it goes, both sides will hear from partisans that affirm their views.
Right.
And so I just think we assume it's going to be short, and it might be. Right. They could 10 minutes from now announce something.
We also
but I don't assume it.
Right. Now, Margaret, here's the thing. There's also this blame game going back and forth, which when it comes to where we are in the shutdown over a weekend, there are people affected, but it's a very small group of people relative to what it will be. Okay? They are blaming each other with alliteration and all. Here they are.
America knows this is the Trump shutdown.
We are now engaged in a Schumer shutdown.
The Trump shutdown is all yours.
My favorite is still the Schumer shutdown. So it's got that nice little ring to it, doesn't it?
Alliteration. I think alliteration clearly wins the day, and not just because I'm a Republican. Look, I mean, what you have to look at and you have to acknowledge is the Democrats had a clear strategy here. I mean, what they decided to do is go for broke. They got at Chip, right? But then they were like, you know what? Let's see how far we can go. Let's see. Let's push this. And you know that because the way they were counting the votes. I mean, finally, when they knew they had enough Democrats in the Senate to close down the government, they sent out a release saying we have enough. So, look, Joan, if I'm a Democrat, I'm not sure I wouldn't do the same thing. But it's shocking to me that. But it's shocking to me that the principled flexibility of being able to say. I mean, Nancy Pelosi called shutting the government down legislative arson. Okay, they say people will die if you shut the federal government down. They have said it's deeply irresponsible to shut the federal government, and now they're doing it. So Margaret, let's just keep in mind that this is very easy to, you can call it a Schumer shutdown, you can call it a Trump shutdown, but the Democrats made this happen, and they
That's preposterous.
5 weeks before March 5th.
I think the most important thing that we need to realize today, it's the anniversary of Inauguration Day. It's very perfect because we have to face the fact that we now have a new president, and his name is John Kelly. And the vice president is Stephen Miller. Because truly, Donald Trump has met with bipartisan leaders. Donald Trump has met with Chuck Schumer twice. Let me speak. I did interrupt you, but anyway.
I was saying you had a fair point.
Okay. Oh, good. Donald Trump has made 2 deals. Democrats and Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake have walked away, and then they've had to deal with John Kelly and Stephen Miller saying no deal. So John Kelly is the new president. He is the power. I guess they should be negotiating with them. And Donald Trump is hoist on his own
Jason, what do you make of this? Because the president seems to want to be Mr. Nice Guy. I'll sign anything. Let's have a bill of love. Let's bring in Chuck Schumer.
Right, the bill
and then
of
somehow
love.
those people leave the room, and his position flips completely. Chuck Schumer calls it Jell-O. Well, but what is it? Who is making the decisions?
And I would say with Senator Schumer, it's a little bit of 3-card Monty because you can't exactly trust what he's saying. But I think Joan made a very important point, which, yes, this is the anniversary of President Trump being inaugurated as our 45th president of the United States. And if you look at his first year, the successes that he has had, this once-in-a-generation tax cut, the booming economy, record low unemployment. If you think about what would happen if Secretary Clinton had won the election, if she got to this 1-year mark and had that record, my left of center friends wouldn't be here this evening. They'd be in South Dakota chiseling Hillary Clinton's image into the side of Mount Rushmore.
What are you trying to say here? There's plenty who think that's Are you indicating something's about to happen?
I'm saying this is a fantastic first year. So you go to we talk about what's going on today with the whole
He's
government
mired
shutdown.
in the Russia scandal.
Oh, this is a fantastic record.
He's mired in
the ISIS.
He's got Barack Obama's
Make a point of the shutdown.
So I think the Democrats have really picked an interesting hill to die on here, pun intended. The fact that they are putting hundreds of thousands of people who are here in this country illegally ahead of the rest of the country. I think this shows a radical shift in the Democratic Party. And I'd say really they're putting Democrats in states like West Virginia, Missouri, North Dakota, Montana, Indiana. They're going to be on the endangered species list as we go into the midterm elections.
Okay.
And so, well, hold on. But with President Trump with DACA,
it's actually not choosing.
But when you talk about DACA, the president has said that he's willing to sit down and make a deal. There have to be some core principles. There have to be some core principles in it. We've got to build a wall. Need to end the visa lottery.
Pause only for a moment.
Just one
Democrats are unwilling to do that.
One thing, Chuck Schumer says. Other people say he offered money for the wall. Democrats were screaming. Then Luis Gutierrez got on our air today. You could call him an immigration hardliner, and he said, I'll go build the wall myself. Democrats are moving on this. They have moved.
And the lottery and chain migration. Those are important principles that have to be in anything the president's going to go with.
The Durbin deal actually had some caving, some compromise on chain migration and the lottery.
Guys, here's the important thing, though, with DACA. Even in describing what the fix is going to be, there are core differences between where Republicans and Democrats are.
Really, is there really any fix if someone's been here since they're 3 and they're now 20, other than letting them stay?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I agree with you.
I mean, I'm just saying, if someone's been here since they're 3 and now they're 20, is there really any fix that doesn't involve letting them stay in the United States?
Maybe they've been in the military.
Of course there's a fix for them to be able to stay. And that's what President Trump
Right, so if everyone can agree that they should stay, this shouldn't be so hard to include DACA.
But there have to come together to come up with some soft
The president needs to stop letting Stephen Miller Bigfoot his impulses on immigration reform. He couldn't pull a Nixon in China. This is a moment of potential leadership building on bipartisan compromise, but he let himself get big-footed by hardliners in his own administration. He's got to step up and change it.
President Kelly.
And we're going to hit pause next. Everyone's still with us. The resistance, the hundreds of thousands turning out coast to coast against Trump today, plus the war of the words, Trump shutdown versus Schumer shutdown. Well, one of them is trending a whole lot more than the other, and White House top aide Kellyanne Conway will be out front. And remember all the promises Trump made on the campaign trail? Well, you heard Jason's point of view. What are the facts? How is he doing 1 year later? We've got the report.
In need of great talent for your business, but short on time? You don't have to get lost in a huge stack of resumes to find your perfect hire. You just need the right tools, smarter tools. It can be challenging finding great talent to make your business successful. ZipRecruiter posts your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click. Then ZipRecruiter actively looks for the most qualified candidates and invite them to apply. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/outfront. That's ZipRecruiter.com/outfront. One more time, to try it for free, go to ZipRecruiter.com/outfront.
Welcome back to our special edition of Out Front this Saturday night, following breaking news on multiple fronts. Live pictures of Capitol Hill. Lawmakers, it sounds like tonight, giving up on a deal to end a government shutdown. And who knows if it changes in the next few minutes. But as of now, no progress. Protesters also today out en masse to protest the 1 year anniversary of President Trump's inauguration. Demonstrations took place in cities from coast to coast: Washington, Los Angeles, Chicago, and many others. Kyung La is out front in L.A. And Kyung, what was the mood like there, the attendance?
It was very different from last year in one particular way, Erin. It was a lot of women coming together. It was a lot of women saying that they needed to have a united voice. What was different this year is that it's very directed to action, and that action that you heard over and over again from the podium from every single speaker, and I tried to keep count at first, but then I lost count, is that they have to get politically active. They have to get out there and vote. They have to run for office, and that's something that this crowd was certainly receptive to. The mayor of Los Angeles announced that this was the single largest women's march in the entire country, and estimated, according to the city, 500,000 marchers who walked through the streets of downtown Los Angeles. And as I walked through the crowd, we saw a number of signs that all pointed to the midterms, the 2018 midterms that'll happen later this year, that women want to have a voice, that women will make a difference. And Erin, just from our coverage of what women have been doing since last year's Women's March, we already know that they're training to run, an exponential number of women training to run, first-time women attempting to run for office. Erin?
All right. Thank you, Kyung. And my guests are back with me. Joan, you were in one of the protests today here in New York. And obviously you were there last year as well.
Yeah.
How was it, the same or different?
You know, I would agree that there's so much of a focus on the midterms and on action. Last year there was a real sense of grief. It turned into pride and solidarity because the marches were so large. But there was a sense of what are we going to, what are we doing here? What are we going to do? And we saw in 2017, the most popular sign I saw today was grab them by the midterms. Now, we all know what that refers to. I'm not going to have to say it on the air. And I just felt like people are looking at Virginia, where the 13 of the 16 women won their races. They really powered the Democratic comeback. Emily's List now has 26,000 women who've contacted them to run for office. They had 1,000 in the election year of 2016. So women are running, they're stepping up, they're winning. And we've got 35 Republican incumbents in the House who've stepped down, and women are stepping up to run against them.
You're going to see a lot more. I mean, Margaret, some of the protesters today, our reporters around the country had a chance to talk to a few of them. Here they are.
This feels like a protest today. Last year, it felt more like a funeral. This feels like anger and resistance.
We're trying to take all this energy that we see here in this amazing march and take it to the polls and really make our voices heard.
Hopefully they'll hear our voices, and if they don't, they'll hear our voices in November.
What do you make of it, Margaret?
So that is all very constructive, right? You have a movement, you have a groundswell, and you put it to action in a really concerted, driven way. I would hope, for the sake of their efficacy, that they really are that directed, and it really is, as Joan described, a very focused movement. But I do think you have to worry. There's so much about the Women's March that meets the airwaves and then gets a bit of a laugh. And it just reminds me of the Hoffer quote. First you have a movement, then it becomes a business, then it becomes a racket, right?
Who's laughing?
One has to think as that. There is a lot about the Women's March. This started as a protest of Trump, and then it became like this 365 Women's March. It's like, you're marching every single day? And I think Republicans take note. There is a real groundswell out there against these candidates that you describe. And as a political operative who is supporting Republicans in the midterms, I am quite worried about many of our centrist candidates. I think that's real. But the Women's March as a entity, as a political organization that has become sort of this 365 political operation.
Well, there was a lot going on today. I mean, in terms of, the Me Too. I mean, John, the president actually got involved with a tweet.
Yeah.
Okay. Shocker. He's sitting at home and he's watching it on his screen. He's hearing it outside his window. Look, last year he didn't want to get involved at all. This year, beautiful weather all over our great country. And I'm so mad I'm not in Mar-a-Lago. Sorry, everybody. That was
Didn't have room for that.
Get out there now to celebrate the historic milestones and unprecedented economic success and wealth creation that has taken place over the past 12 months. Lowest female unemployment in 18 years. Now, was he just trolling them?
Of course he was trolling, but I gotta say, by President Trump's tweet standards, that was actually pretty witty and restrained.
Yes.
I mean, it was a soft troll. A soft troll. And that's the best you're going to get from Trump's Twitter feed. So, good for him having a sense of humor.
And he is pointing at something. Yeah. And when you talk about the midterms, might really matter. Yeah. The unemployment rate is a fact.
Low.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to it, do people say, well, my personal situation is better, and I'm going to give him credit for it?
Yeah, and we've seen some of the polling on this so far, right? Trump seems to be getting much more credit than he used to, and it's still, I think, split between who kind of gives Obama credit. I think Obama gets about 49%, and Trump gets about 41, 42% in the last polls I saw, and he probably would get more if he tweeted less and if he trolled people less, but that's something that he's not able to do. It'll be interesting to see. I think every time there's an election year, midterm, a presidential election as well, there's always this idea of, will it really be Year of the Woman like it was in 1992, and that was in the wake of Clarence Thomas. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. You talked about the women running and women sort of showing up in Virginia. We also saw that in Alabama, particularly with African-American women really making a difference in that race. So it'll be fascinating to see.
Quick question, Jason. Very quick.
So two things. One, I think that Nia is exactly right when it comes to where does this all go? Where do we go from here? I think the two parties are in midterm elections about energy and enthusiasm within the base, right? The Women's March is not for everyone, but it doesn't have to be, because if the Democratic liberal base of the Democratic Party is fired up, That's a huge deal, and we saw it. We saw it in the Virginia state legislature. They've won 34 state legislative elections, Republican held.
Republicans lost a seat in Wisconsin.
Correct.
They shouldn't have lost it.
Donald Trump won by 16 points. So I do think that translation, I was frankly surprised / impressed that, to Joan's point, I watched it on TV. And when I was walking here to the studio, I saw a lot of the rally was close to CNN studio.
Yeah, you saw.
There were a ton of midterm signs, which is a very sophisticated. I mean, most people are like, I hate Donald Trump. That's very sophisticated messaging, which is, I hate Donald Trump, and I'm going to show it. Now, it's January, not November, but that's a good sign if you're a Democrat.
Democrats heading into the midterms, as we saw in a good column that my friend Roy Murdoch wrote in National Review today, started off asking the question, are you better off today than you were a year ago? And for most of the people that we saw marching in those images, the answer is a resounding yes. That's going to be a tough message going into the midterms when they want to have change, when everyone sees their 401ks going up, unemployment going down.
You know what's interesting about that? Just very quickly, to Jason's point. If Donald Trump never made a public appearance and never tweeted and had the record that he had in terms of Jason's accomplishments, I think he'd be getting better poll numbers. The problem is the electorate is so divided and polarized against him.
His supporters love it. From his own successes when he has them by his.
I just mean for people who aren't his core supporters. I think there's an argument to be made if he was. I mean, he's not going to be. But if he was less Donald Trump.
Pause for a moment. Top Trump aide Kellyanne Conway is next. What is the president doing to end the shutdown? Kellyanne will answer, and Trump's missing a splashy, expensive party that he wants to be at this hour at Mar-a-Lago. Look, it's so shrouded in secrecy. The shot is even grainy. What's going on there? We'll be back.
You think I'm crazy?
A monster unleashed.
My God.
A man obsessed.
He's watching us.
A city in fear. Mondays on TNT, the hunt for pure evil begins.
Cold-blooded killers walk among us.
Based on the best-selling novel, Daniel Bruhl, Luke Evans, and Dakota Fanning.
What compels a man to do evil?
The Alienist, new limited series Mondays at 9, 8 central on TNT.
The government has been shut down for 19 and a half hours now, and there is no solution in sight. President Trump and the Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer have not spoken today, according to Senator Schumer. Their meeting yesterday seemed promising at first. It seemed like a deal was close. The president called the meeting excellent. Schumer said they were making progress, and since then, boom, absolutely nothing except for blame by both sides over whether it's a Trump shutdown or a Schumer shutdown. Out front tonight, Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president. Kellyanne, thanks for being with me. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Erin.
On this question of who's talking to whom, Senator Schumer says he hasn't spoken with the president today. Has the president talked to anyone on Capitol Hill today or any Democrats, Kellyanne?
The president is constantly working the phones and invites people here in a steady stream. You saw it live and in person about 10 days ago when he had a bicameral bipartisan meeting in the cabinet room on the specific matter of immigration. He's willing to get back to those negotiations on immigration once the Democrats agree to reopen the government. If you voted no last night, Erin, if you voted no to this spending bill as a Senate Democrat, you voted no to military families, you voted no to Social Security checks, you voted no to children relying upon the CHIP program, you voted no to Border Patrol agents. The DACA deadline is in March. The deadline for the government spending was last night. So let's do this sequentially. Let's get to a deal. The president has made very clear he supports what the House passed. He had Senator Schumer here yesterday in a very small private meeting. And he is a master deal maker. He's a negotiator. I still don't think a year into this that swamp speed in Washington really understands the way President Trump makes decisions and how he has built a very successful career outside of Washington, outside of politics. He's willing to talk. Everybody saw it transparently. CNN covered it for an entire hour last week.
Yes, we did. We absolutely did. And obviously a lot's changed since then in terms of everyone's positions. But
that was about immigration. That wasn't about the government shutdown. And he's willing to talk. We can get back to
even in his own party, Lindsey Graham said what happened between the guy on Tuesday and the guy on Thursday.
But again,
I just want to ask you the question. You say he's a deal maker. If he was such a great deal maker, the government wouldn't be closed, would it?
That's just not true, and here's why. The President of the United States executes the laws. The Congress makes the laws. This is a spending bill. The continuing resolution is a spending bill. So the President stands ready. He's here behind me. He stands ready to sign into law anything that is put on his desk that is reasonable and reopens the government. But I think that the resistance, the very proud motto that the left and the Democrats have had for over a year now, Erin, it's a very fraud. It comes with great risk, because if the country sees you always saying resist, obstruct, no, holding up a stop sign, they know who's shutting down the government. They know who resisted the tax cuts last month. And I think in the space of a month, the Democrats have made two huge mistakes. Being on the wrong side of the tax cuts, which America now sees, has led to 20,000 jobs by Apple, has led to massive wealth.
Who's responsible for coming up leading with what's going to happen here? And you're saying it's up to Congress. Well, here's what is happening in Congress. On your own party, Kellyanne, Republicans are saying they don't know what the president wants, and they need his leadership. Here are two of them.
I'm looking for something that President Trump supports, and he's not yet indicated what measure he's willing to sign.
I prefer clarity, but we're not seeing that from the White House, and that does to some degree make our jobs more difficult here on Capitol Hill.
That's pretty damning, Kellyanne. That's two Republicans.
It's not damning at all. And Leader McConnell's statements were about a different issue. He's been leading the negotiations as the majority leader in the United States Senate. We've had House members on the phone as well over here throughout the week. And this is anybody who wants to call the president can. They know that. And he works the phones himself. But this has to be a full-on endeavor. Erin, we still don't understand why Democrats who support each individual piece in the continuing resolution don't support the continuing resolution. You now have Democrats against S-chip. You now have Democrats against Border Patrol agents because they want to resolve people who came across the same border illegally. This president has said he has committed to resolving the DACA issue. I know many people do not expect him to do that.
To this point, though, Kellyanne, of course, they would say they're not against those things. They're for them, but they insist that a DREAMer, a DACA solution, be part of this.
Why?
You're saying that's completely off the table. There is no way at this point, in any way, shape, or form, that the president will entertain that concept?
Well, Erin, but let me ask you why they want that. It actually doesn't make practical sense when you think just of the timeline. So the government shut down last night. The continuing resolution expired on January 19th. DACA needs to be resolved by March, and only because after court decisions, this president gave the Congress an extra 6 months. They had 9 months in 2017. They did nothing. He gave them another 6 months. And since then, for all the world to see in an hour meeting that you covered live, thank you for doing that. I think it's great to have that type of transparency and accountability in our government. This president
it would have been nice to have cameras in the meeting where he said assholes.
Told them that he would go ahead and help them resolve this issue. He's still willing to do that, but we can't get there if the government is shut down, if our military families don't know if they have the funding they need. Let's listen very calmly and in a nonpartisan fashion to General Mattis, the Secretary of the Defense. He has clearly said, you can read the letter, that military readiness is imperiled when we have a lapse in funding, when we have a temporary or a government shutdown. That should concern all Americans. It certainly concerns me.
I think it apparently concerns the Democrats as well. They just believe this should be bigger.
They can vote to reopen the government and not have this one issue that's not even due right now that the president has said he will negotiate on, along with the other three things that are important to him.
Kellyanne, do you find it, though, confusing, as it certainly is, according to the polls, which show that Americans so far blame Republicans and the president for the shutdown, as he, of course, said they would when it was President Obama's shutdown. Do you find it confusing that Republicans control the White House, the Senate, and the House, and you're trying to say Democrats are to blame?
What I'm saying is those Democrats who cast a vote of no last night voted against keeping the government open. They voted against Border Patrol agents and firefighters getting their money. They voted against our military being completely funded. They voted against 9 million or so children who rely upon, our most vulnerable children, relying upon CHIP. That's what I'm saying. And to your larger point, as you know, there are 60 votes that are necessary. So this, by its definition, has to be bipartisan.
It certainly does.
And we did see, and Erin, we saw...
And not only do you not have those Democrats, you don't even have all the Republicans.
Well, we saw there were a few last night who didn't vote yes to that particular measure. But, Erin, they all voted yes to the taxes, pretty much. And when they had a chance to give historic middle-class tax relief, including to a lot of those women who were marching today, by the way, they did that. But a couple of Democrats, I think a handful of Democrats starting peeling off last night. And I think that's I saw your panel talking about the midterms. I think that's a very big moment of inflection because they're basically saying to the leadership, we're not going to go down with you because you're mollifying a left-wing base at this point or people are auditioning for 2020. We're going to vote to keep the government open because we have to go back home and explain why we didn't. And that included the newest senator, Doug Jones from Alabama, who's not up for re-election.
All right. Thank you very much, Kellyanne. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And next, that splashy fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago. The president just taped a message for his supporters who are going ahead with the party. What did he say about the shutdown tonight to them and Trump's many campaign promises that got him elected? Is he following through?
Hey there, it's Alicia Malone. I'm the host of the Filmstruck podcast, a show made by film lovers for film lovers. We have great conversations with people working behind the scenes in Hollywood movies, like Liz Hannah and Josh Singer. This is an incredible story. It is the very first feature film script for Liz Hannah. She wrote it without knowing if it would ever make the big screen, and then
3 months later, I got a call that Stephen, Tom, and Meryl were all reading it and that they were really thinking about doing it. So that was the sort of the best and most terrifying phone call I've ever gotten.
Can you imagine your very first feature film being made by Steven Spielberg and starring Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep? Make sure you subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
To a special edition of OutFront as we follow the breaking news tonight. The government shutting down, the White House on defense, insisting the Democrats are to blame for it being paralyzed. This coming as the Senate has just adjourned for the night. So that's it. No vote tonight, guys. They're coming back. Oh, they're not getting up early tomorrow morning. They can have brunch. They can go to the gym. Assuming they're not going to the gym at Congress because I guess they're complaining the towels aren't there because of the shutdown.
So
anyway, they're coming in session tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah. And McConnell's making the Bloody Marys.
That's a hard-working weekend.
And Erin, even if they
they're getting paid.
Unless they change,
getting paid,
they're
right?
getting
They're
paid.
getting unless they change something, which they could, but unless they change something, the first time there could be a cloture vote, stop debate, potentially get the government to reopen is 1 a.m. on Monday.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're coming in tomorrow, but it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Right, so I guess in that sense, they're willing to work along. They just want to be able to sleep in. I don't know. All right, anyway, plenty of jokes to be made. Nia, I spoke to, obviously, just Kellyanne Conway. We all just heard her. Your reaction to her spin on this?
Well, I mean, it's the spin that's expected, right? I mean, it's a spin we've heard from Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It's a spin we've heard from Donald Trump, this idea that it's the Schumer shutdown. And they're hoping to sell that. They're hoping to make it stick. They're hoping that particularly among some of those Democrats, people like John Tester in Montana, a state that Trump won by 20 points. But John Tester they'll feel the heat and maybe start going along with whatever sort of continuing resolution over the next couple of days.
But where you sit doesn't matter where you stand. That's not new. But Kellyanne's saying it's a very effective framing of the issue, that the shutdown hurts families. But that's not the Republican talking point from 2013 when they shut down the government on President Obama. So there's situational ethics on both sides. Right. And I think that's what a lot of folks get frustrated about.
Right. And Margaret, you're pointing to, and obviously you're a Republican here on this, but that you see the Democrats' point of view. Right? They're not against CHIP or whatever. They're for it, but they really want the dreamers in there, and there's a reason.
Here's the problem. I mean, this is really, at this point, it's all tactics, right? And it's like, how much can they get? And what they really want is something on immigration. Yep. They don't think there's any way to get it unless, guns blazing in a moment of total heatedness. We have gotten to a point where our government is far more dysfunctional than the founders ever intended in order to get something done. Yeah. With this hyper-polarization and hyper-partisanship, it takes a government shutdown to force somebody's hand. And if the Democrats can hold together and toe their line, with the Republicans in such disarray, they might actually successfully force this immigration issue. And frankly, there are some Republicans probably who want some immigration reform, Lindsey Graham, Jeff Flake among them, who probably applaud this strategy, even though, even though there's total hypocrisy, as John said, on both sides, because Democrats were way holier than thou 3 years ago about Republicans.
Here's Schumer's famous quote, right? If you shut the government down over immigration, you're just causing chaos.
We've got quotes on both sides. This is one case where both Both-siderism is actually true on this one. I will grant that.
Both-siderism, yes.
Here's the thing that everybody is missing is we actually have a president who wants to fix this problem.
Okay, but Jason, then I asked Kellyanne.
Bush couldn't get it done. Obama couldn't get it done. Trump will get it done. But Schumer is holding us hostage and saying that he's going to shut down the federal. Yes, you can. You have to have 60 votes. You have to have 60 votes.
They both walked out saying there was a progress. And Republicans, as you just heard, are saying we don't know where our own president stands.
Right. It's easy where it stands. Build the wall, end chain migration, and get rid of the visa lottery. And also, we have to make sure we get to a common...
But when those points were put in a talking points by the Department of Homeland Security cabinet chief, he said, I don't know what these are. I don't agree with them. Throw them out.
Because there are other parts of it, too, as far as what's the definition of DACA. But again, here's the thing. Schumer is going and shutting down the federal government to try to force through something that's completely unconnected to it. And that is absolutely ridiculous.
And he might very well get it.
It's the last straw.
Anyone blames a shutdown.
That was the
minority leader.
That's right.
Yes, it takes 60 votes, but I think the Republicans. This is simplistic, but the facts. Republicans control the White House, Congress, every lever there. Yes, you need 60 votes, but I just don't see how, politically speaking, the average person, I think of my parents who are not watching cable TV every minute. They're not following this, that. They don't know what cloture is. They don't care about any of that stuff. They know Republicans are in charge, right? Most people know Republicans are in charge, and they know the government is currently shut down. I just think, and I made the same argument back in the day on when Democrats were saying, well, with 60 votes, and people don't engage on that stuff. One party controls Washington. Right. That part, I would be stunned if that party didn't get
Citizen Trump.
CNN
showed that Trump and Republicans, 37% of people
for everything, and that offers some clarity. I think the other thing that's just a really stark reminder of how dysfunctional our government has become is that 60-vote standard, which has been sidestepped by McConnell to push through things at a 51, is basically untenable right now because our politics are so broken.
Well, it was untenable under Barack Obama, too. I mean, the Republicans, I loved when Kellyanne said they're going to be the party of no, the party of obstruction. This isn't going to work for them. Well, as a matter of fact, it did work for Republicans.
Well.
It worked very well. Yeah. The other thing that she said that was really so heartless is the idea that we can wait until March. DACA doesn't happen until March. There are families. There are 700,000 to 800,000 people across the country who don't know where they're going to be in March and April and May. That's not cool. That's not fine. That's cruel.
And Trump made it happen.
And Trump made it happen.
Well, Schumer needs to quit holding everyone hostage.
I would really like to see Kellyanne be insecure about where she's going to be in March. I really would like to see that.
Thank you all staying here. And next, Trump made a lot of promises that he alone could deliver on, he said. So, has he kept some, and which ones has he broken? And shutdown reset. 20 hours into the crisis, it's not looking good. They're sleeping in late tomorrow. What are the odds it all changes at 1 a.m. Monday morning? Welcome back to a special edition of OutFront. President Trump made a lot of promises on the campaign trail. Among them, cutting taxes. And that is a promise he kept. His tax reform plan was his biggest legislative victory in his first year in office. But what about his other signature promises? Tom Foreman is out front. So, Tom, let's start with the wall. I mean, how many times did he say the wall, the wall, the wall, and who's going to pay for it? Mexico. It was a chant at his rallies.
Yeah, like a lot of candidates, he made big promises. Like a lot of presidents, he hasn't delivered so much. And that gold-plated promise of a wall, that's one of the really big ones. He said he would start instantly building it along the southern border, and Mexico would pay for it. A year later, we have a few prototypes, but no sign of any serious construction. And his own chief of staff says there may be some more fees, but no, Mexico's not going to pay for this thing. What about Obamacare? This was one of those things where he said, absolutely, we're going to overturn it. Has not happened. The Republican tax plan has done a little bit of damage to it, but overall, complete repeal like people wanted, no, that pledge has not been fulfilled. His plan for a great big infrastructure plan where he would have new roads and new bridges and new dams coast to coast, no real sign of that out there. He has fulfilled his promise to be good for the economy. The recovery that started under Barack Obama has continued steaming along. Housing prices are up. Unemployment is down. The stock market is booming. That's gone very well. And you mentioned a minute ago tax cuts. It took until the 11th hour, but yeah, the Republicans passed a new tax plan. Not clear who the real winners and losers will be in the long run, but he promised he'd do it. And it's done. Erin?
So now you also have immigration, which is a hugely contentious issue right now in the center of all discussions. Where is Trump on that?
Well, again, you get into sort of murky water here. He said at one point that he was going to deport everybody who was in this country illegally. At the time, that was estimated well over 11 million people. He started sort of fish biting back from that and changing things. So now the deportations have ticked up a little bit, nowhere near those numbers. He said he was going to ban Muslims from coming into this country. You know, huge legal problems every time he's tried. Most recently, the courts have allowed him to partially fulfill that. But the one really huge victory he has here in terms of his promises is right there in the courts. He said he would pack the courts with conservative judges, and he has, including a Supreme Court Justice, Neil Gorsuch. Yeah, some of them were criticized as unqualified, some had to withdraw, but he's had a huge impact here. This is absolutely a slam dunk in terms of his promises. And, Erin, it is one that will have an impact for decades.
That's right, absolutely. Unlike a regulation or an executive order can be overturned by the next president, the courts will stay that way for the lifetimes of those who serve.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Tom Foreman.
You're welcome.
And next, the shutdown blame game is getting rather nasty, as you can see. Wait till you see an ad just out from Trump camp, which takes the fight to a whole new level.